Okay. Okay. So this is the fifth episode of the Rob Untitled podcast. That isn't even a podcast, it's just videos. But hopefully I can eventually put it in a podcast form. And
I
the
like the title.
it took a lot of effort. And the guest for this episode is an old friend of mine, Holland Hume. And we'll let Holland take it from here on how do we know each other, Holland?
Hey, thanks for having me on. We met, boy, 13 years ago, I think about.
Yeah, 13 years ago. Sounds about right.
Yeah, 13. I'm good at math. Clearly, I'm a professional mathematician for work. We met like 22, 23 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. It was like I started there in December of 2000. Um,
Okay.
so and you'd been there beforehand.
Yeah, I
It
just
it's
started. It was like a few months after I turned 16. It was my very first job.
and just this will be shocking for everybody, but this is another friend I met from when I worked at the movie theater that
Yep.
I've kept in touch with.
The wonderful movie theater. But yeah, I think we met there and I think we clicked pretty quickly. Like, even though we weren't like friends right away, I think we got along pretty much right away. Like, we kind of had that same vibe, same energy level, same kind of sense of humor. So I think it just kind of naturally progressed from there.
I remember thinking you were the only person that worked there. I'd like early on that I remember thinking this guy is like maybe on par with me on like sarcasm and like dry humor. And yeah, I remember we clicked right away. It was I was 19, you were 16, and yeah, it's kind of funny because I worked. You didn't work there as long as I did, but I remember like over the time I worked there, there was like a lot of different people that would kind of almost like be my sidekick, like follow me around and kind of like and it's almost like it makes me think of like Batman. And I don't
Mhm.
mean this to denigrate you as a Robin, but like you know how the original Nightwing was a badass, but then you have all these like little Robins that got killed off, and like I feel like everyone else was like a little Robin that got killed off, but you were like Nightwing. You were the one that like, and the only true like person that could rival my absurd sarcasm of the theater.
Thank you. That's one of the sweetest things anyone's ever said about me.
Believe that.
No, I like to like because I think at the theater there was this weird like kind of black and white like or I guess black and white and shit where you'd have like people that cared way too much and really wanted to do like the best job and take everything so seriously. And then you had people that didn't care and were just like clearly there for a paycheck, but also weren't even there to converse. And then you had people that didn't care and were very self-destructive about it. And then I think you and I and a few others fit in that category where we didn't care, but we also like we cared enough to do like a good like I'm gonna put effort into it because you know I have my own self-worth and my own like I'm gonna do something that not I can be proud of because it's a minimum wage job, but like I have a certain minimal level I'm going to hit, but also I'm not going to bend over backwards because the manager of a movie theater says this isn't clean enough, or I want the sweepers to sweep quieter. It's like, go fuck yourself, man.
I remember when I first started, like I took the job seriously when I first started, just like working hard in terms, but I remember and me and you both did this, but like I would exaggerate how important I thought the job was. Like you remember
Yeah,
like I would act like I was pissed, act like everything was over the top serious, and anyone who like knew me knew it was like a character.
yeah,
And I remember you doing the thing where you would tell Jim, the GM, how much you loved work and that you didn't want to take breaks and you didn't want to take lunches, and he was forcing you this state said you have to take, and so you'd clock out and you'd run out and start cleaning something up in front of him. Do you remember that? Like, and
yeah.
he would go, "Stop doing this," and like he'd chase you off, and because we loved working so hard.
Yeah. When that whole thing started because one of the assistant managers wouldn't let me take a 15. And I told him, I was like, well, I got to, by law, I get a 15. And they're like, I don't care. You need to work. This is important. And so my response, I was like, you're right. This is important. You know what? No more breaks. We're just going to keep going 24/7 for the theater.
Yeah, that place ruined my work ethic. Like I remember coming in there and being like, work hard, blah, blah, blah. And I only planned to work there for like 6 months. And then it was just a few months into it when I started seeing like, dude, some of these management, it wasn't all of them because there was some really, really cool ones and ones I liked, but there was just this weird click thing with certain management where they just thought they were better than people and they tried to flex any sort of power they had on any chance they got. And hindsight, I look back at it, it's like, well, you give power to a 20-year-old or a 21-year, like you're gonna create some villains. Um, but yeah, and it made me kind of bitter. And I remember like, even though I tried to have a good work ethic, like, dude, my sarcasm was definitely through the roof for the rest of the time I was there.
I feel like it was a good life lesson for me because I agree with everything you say. There was really bad power trips and abuse of power and favorites and all that, but that's everywhere. So I mean, I think to see the most raw, intense example of that firsthand, like at 16, it was a good eye opener. And that, like, oh, okay, this is gonna happen like at every job I go to for the rest of my life. And obviously, it hasn't been that bad, but I think it still exists at damn near every job.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. Um, I think that like it, it's weird because I feel like it's a common theme where you wish you knew then what you know now.
Yeah.
It's like if I could go back to that point, I think my mindset would have been different. I think I was too bitter. I think I was too like, even though I was only 19, 20 or whatever, like I was bitter. I got bitter at that job pretty quickly. And then I should have just relaxed and been like, this is an easy job. Don't stress about it. Don't create rivalries with everybody because none of this shit matters. Um, but yeah, I mean, do you have any like memories from back then that stand out or?
Oh yeah, I mean lots of fun ones. Like it's really funny because based on what you said, like it's the same thing where I feel like I definitely, even though like I didn't take the work serious, I took the emotions of it too seriously. And I think that's an age thing, like because it's the same with high school. You're in high school and it's the most important thing ever. And everything that's happening in high school is life or death. And it was the same with the job at the time. Like, oh, this is so significant. This is so important. And it's like, it's really not. And it's funny because I remember not hating the job, but there was definitely mixed, like I had stresses and I had this and that and like things that would frustrate me. And now it's only just good memories. Like all that stuff that frustrated me either is gone from my memory or is something I laugh at now. Where it's like, oh man, I used to get so annoyed that, so and so did this. It's so funny.
There, oh yeah, definitely. It's like, I've grown like older now and like working other jobs and have kind of experienced like, other environments and stuff. Like, um, I've dealt with like way stressor stuff and then kind of, evolved to be able to deal with those stressor situations. And now, now I kind of look back on that stuff and it's, yeah, I mean, I just like nowadays I work and I'm still sarcastic, but I'm like a lot nicer about it. Like, I work with a lot of like currently I work with a lot of people that are like um a lot of different nationalities, it's like a factory work, but it's like um yeah, you just kind of learn how to like, I don't know. I'm like rambling on my own fucking podcast. I don't know what I'm saying.
No, I totally get what you're saying. It's like you learn more to just like not let things go because that implies that there's still a power there. It's like it's not even something you have to let go. It's just nothing. It's just a wave that can wash over you, and that's it. Maybe you get a little wet, but that water's going to dry soon.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to try to grab the wave and wrestle it to the beach. Like, it's going to pass and it'll be gone, and then another wave will come and then that'll be gone too.
Yeah. Um, there's a couple stories from back then regarding you that stand out to me. One of them I know is your favorite when I used to set you up to embarrass you in front of Mary. Not just Mary, I did that a couple times, and then also the time you were wanting to be introduced to our at the time our friend Matt's sister that had went in the movie, and
God, I forgot about her. Yeah.
and was it Brandon? Was it me and Brandon that were like giving you a speech on like what to say to her and how to do it, and we are gonna set you up, and you're like all excited, and then she comes out, and I immediately interrupt, and I go like I act like I've been arguing with you, and I was like, Holland, dude, I already told you what her name was. Quit asking about her, dude. Like that's dude. She's like, and then Matt saw, well, he's asking about my sister. I go, yeah, dude, I already told him. Like he keeps talking about it. It's weird. And then she just had this, look, and dude, yeah, we pranked you quite a few times.
Yeah.
Or about me telling you like, here's what you say to Mary, and I was like around the corner, and I kept telling you like things to say, and then you said all of it, and then she goes, Holland, that is rude. And then I pretended to walk around the corner and I go, Holland, did you just say that to Mary? That's fucked up. You're like, no, you were telling me. And I go, what are you talking about? But just, man, it was like a blank check, that job, for like endless jokes and pranks and whatnot.
It was like, it's seriously like, it was such a Wild West atmosphere. It's so funny to look at now. Like, yes, there was problems with it, but at the same time, like, we got away with so much. Like,
How was I not fired
just
12 times? Like some of
exactly
those
same.
stories would not have.
And yeah, just it was always something happening. I remember like uh the uh the guy that was always an usher that looked like a skeleton. Uh
Scott?
yeah.
Dude, I work with Scott now.
Are you serious?
And dude, I ran into him at the a couple years ago. When I started the factory job. I was like, holy shit, that's Scott. And then I said something to him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I was like, "Dude, nobody knew what happened to you. We thought you died." And yeah, I've hung out with him a few times since. We've gone out for like beers or pizza or something. Me, him, and Charlie Olson went and hung out a few times. Oh yeah, and while we're all hanging out, we are at the Red Robin by the theater, telling old stories. And
Yeah.
we started talking shit. And then when we were walking out, dude, Tanisha was walking in.
What?
And it was like she gave a weird look to Scott, then looked at Charlie, and then looked at me, and I was like, dude, that's got to be a weird. Like her being like, what?
She's like, were they waiting for me? Is this a revenge thing?
Yeah. Um. But yeah, and a couple other memories I kind of have was um, the slapping stuff that went on where we had to have an employee meeting over slapping. If you remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
And did you?
remember what was it, Mike? He
Uh-huh.
used to punch me in the arm, and he'd be like, dead arm, and hit me, and he was like, twice the size of me. And Theo caught him doing it one time, and he goes, I'll give you an option. You can either have Holland hit you or you can get a write up. And he was like, oh, Holland can hit me, I don't care. And Theo goes, okay, Holland, go for it. And without hesitating, I grabbed one of the usher brooms and hit him across the back with it. And Theo was like, damn, Holland. I was
Jeez.
like, you didn't say hands, man. You didn't say fist.
Do you remember Chris who worked at the theater, the usher? I can't think, Kleinschmidt or something. I can't remember his last name.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I did this thing for a while where I'd twirl around the like red brooms and stuff and act like I was doing martial arts. And I would do this and I'd always like twirl it and spin it right above his head. And I'd be like, and then he'd look at me weird and I go, hey, don't get all sentimental, okay? This is just me practicing. You're completely safe. And then one of the times I did it, the bristle end just hit him right in the face. And yeah, his face got red. He was pissed. And I was like, I'm so sorry, dude. I was like, took the joke too far. I didn't think I'd hit him. But the thing was, I'd spin it around really fast and like just try to. Oh man.
That was the best first job. Like honestly, it's even with the faults, like it was so much fun and so many good times. I remember like playing Regal baseball where we'd find all the half empty uh sodas
Hmm.
and pitch them down the stairs and hit them with the broom. And it like you'd get a home run if you sprayed it across the chairs, and you'd get
Oh
out if
geez.
you hit it wrong and it would spray back on you. And I was playing with Garrick, I think. And I think it was Garrick. And he hit it and it spun and like sprayed all over himself. And I was like, oh, that's an out. Haha. And he's like standing there for a sec. And I was like, are you okay? And he starts going, fuck, fuck, fuck. I'm like, what's wrong, man? Are you okay? I thought like maybe someone walked in or something. And he goes, it's tobacco spit. The whole thing was tobacco spit. And I was like, oh no. And then he got sent home because he just reeked so bad.
Dude, I think I remember that story.
And again, not fired, not reprimanded. They're just like, I'll go home.
When I did this interview with Gabe, he told the fire extinguisher story.
Oh
So
God.
we need it. We got to hear your side of it because there was a lot of like that son of a bitch.
Yeah, what was it? Yeah, so it was me, Gabe, and Charlie, right?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I've just heard the story.
Yeah. I know Gabe was there because yeah, that motherfucker couldn't tell a lie to save his life. I think Charlie was there too, but definitely Gabe was there. And I forget what the whole point was. We were messing around and we saw that the fire extinguisher didn't have a pin in it. And I was like, oh, I've always wanted to push a fire extinguisher, like, you see it in the movies and stuff. And that was the day I learned that not all fire extinguishers are the same. You have some that are like the foamy thing you see in the theaters or like in the movies, but ours was like a sand and like it immediately spread everywhere. Like it was like a mist, like not foamy at all. I think it's meant to like suffocate the flame, I'm guessing. So we don't hit it that much. We just go, tss, tss, but immediately the whole back area gets filled. And I was like, fuck, fuck, fuck. And I'm like trying to like do this to the doors, like swing them open and close to air out the back room. And I'm like, Gabe, help me. And he's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm like, come on, Gabe. And the alarms start going off. It's like, wee, wee, wee. I was like, oh God, oh God. I'm like, okay. So, Gabe, here's what we're going to do. We're going to say that uh, we bumped into it. Like, I bumped into it and it fell out of the thing because there was also no door. Like, it was supposed to have a door. It didn't have a door. It was supposed to have a pin. It didn't have a pin. And I was like, so we're just gonna say I bumped into it. It fell out of the housing, and when it hit, it landed on the trigger thing, and it went off, and that's it. And Gabe's like, oh my god, we're gonna get fired. We're gonna get fired. I'm like, Gabe, shut up. Just listen. This is what we're gonna say. I bumped into it. It fell, and that's it. It went off. And he's like, okay, okay, okay. So we help everyone like evacuate all the theaters because we have to empty out the entire building. And I'm looking at Gabe and he's like sweating bullets. He's like not having a good time. And I'm like, oh God, just keep it together, man. And then Jim's like, okay, so what happened? And I was like, oh, sir, yeah, Gabe and I were there. And he's like, okay, well, I need to talk to you both separately. I'm like, okay, I understand. So he brings Gabe up and I'm just waiting. And like 15, 20 minutes later, Gabe comes down. I'm like, so we're good? And he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Did you tell him the story? He's like, I don't know, man. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? And then I go up there and Jim's like, hey, Holland, how's it going? I'm like, oh, Jim, I've been better. And he's like, oh, so why don't you tell me in your own words what happened? I'm like, oh, sure. Yeah. Gabe and I were talking and I bumped into the fire extinguisher and it fell out of the housing and hit. And when it hit, uh, it sprayed. And Jim's like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, okay. And he's like looking at his notes, and I'm like, so is that it? And he goes, oh, I'm just reviewing my notes. So it fell. I'm like, yes. And he goes, okay. Uh Gabe said you were holding it. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I was holding it like I had to pick it up. I wasn't gonna, just leave it on the ground and have someone trip on it. Like, yeah, of course I picked it up. And he's like, okay. So it hit the ground and sprayed, and then you picked it up. And I was like, uh-huh, yeah. And he goes, okay, okay, all right. Hmm. I'm like, okay. And he's like, because Gabe said it went off while you were holding it. And I was like, fucking Gabe. And I was like, right, that's what I said. And Jim was like, that's no, that's not what you said. I'm like, yeah, well, okay, sorry, I said it weird. What I meant was I bumped into it, it fell, I picked it up. As I was picking it up, it sprayed. And as I was like picking up and putting it back, it went off as I was putting it back. And he was like, so it didn't hit the ground and spray. And I was like, no, 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 that's ridiculous. No, it went off when I was picking it up. And then he just like looked at me for 3 minutes. And I looked at him back and he was like, sure, there's nothing else you want to tell me? And I was like, nope, nope, that's it. And he's like, okay, go ahead and go back to work, please. And I was like, all right, yep, thank you. Sorry about all this. And then I immediately found Gabe and I was like, what the fuck, dude? We had a whole story. And he's like, I can't remember these things when I'm panicking.
Dude, I'm pretty sure that when I did this exact video with Gabe, I think he flipped it off to go back and watch it, but I think he flipped it to where you were the one that that wasn't like, that caved under pressure. Um,
No, yeah, he completely got the story wrong.
uh, Imagine that, like the entire auditorium, or 16 auditoriums, like flooded out to the parking lot with people. Like how much
Yeah,
money lost, how much.
yeah. And again, no jobs lost, no reprimandations. I didn't get written up for that.
Dude, I only got like one write up my entire time there.
Yeah.
And like, dude, I had security called on me one time. Security there. And I was told to go home, and then when I came back the next day, I was like, "Hey Theo, Sam fired me yesterday," and he goes, "Shut up and get back to work." And I laughed, and then security was there, and security goes, "What are you doing here?" And I go, "I work here." What do you mean? What am I doing here? They're like, "We were on alert last night to find you and escort you out of the building if we see you," and blah blah blah. And I was like, "Oh," and it's gone. And the security guard was like, "In all my years, I've never seen somebody be asked to have security escort them out on the job, and then they just show up like nothing happened the next day." And then I was told one time that the cops are called on me, but I don't know. This isn't when I worked there. Um, but that's when I showed up intoxicated. Oh my god! And I didn't work there, and I had some debaucherous behaviors. Um,
Yeah,
dude,
I
wait,
only
go
oh,
ahead.
go
Sorry.
ahead.
No,
Oh,
you go ahead.
I only got written up twice. And it was the same thing, same event. So I got written up because I had a till that was short, but it was the manager on duty uh, used my till without asking, and they were like, "Oh, you're $16 short." I'm like, "Well, we're $16 short because you used my till," and they're like, "Well, no, I have to give you a write up because you're short," and I'm like, "Well, no, because it's your fault too," and they're like, "No, no, I'm the manager. It doesn't count. It's only on you." And I'm like, "No, I'm pretty sure it doesn't work that way." And they're like, "Yeah, no, I have to write you up for it. Sorry." And then so they wrote me up and they gave it to me and they're like, "We need you to sign this." And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to sign it." And they're like, "Well, you can't leave until you sign it." I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can leave. I don't think you can catch me. And they're like, "Look, just sign it." And I was like, "Okay." So I signed "fuck you" and then got a second write up
Wait,
for
wait, wait.
insubordination.
Sign it, fuck you,
Yeah.
dude. Uh, you'll have to. You don't have to tell me now, but like we got. I have to know what manager that was. I have a feeling, but
She had a son that worked there for a while.
I'm not worked there for a while. Oh, okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Now I know, dude. It's
And then
so.
she gave me that one to sign, and I was like, now that one I'll sign.
Oh my gosh, dude. So that manager you're talking about, I'm not gonna say name, but I remember that manager one time being accused of racism at work because she had like kicked out like these this these black kids that got kicked out, and then their mom showed up to the theater being like, "Why are they getting kicked out?" And
Mhm.
then she was arguing with them and accused her of being racist. And she goes, "I'm not racist. I don't judge people by the color of their skin. I only judge them by the clothes they wear." Like this is what she said. I was right there, and I had to turn around like this.
Oh
And
boy.
the mom was like, and another time she oh, what was it? She had there's so much dirty laundry I could say about. I gotta watch these episodes because I don't have any interest in anything negative about people from years ago. I hold no grudge, but I
Yeah.
remember that same manager also one time having somebody toss all the applications that had Asian names and said, "Yeah, they're just pretty lazy for the most part." And like,
Wow.
yeah. So, and the thing was, it was an employee that came and told me that, and they were like, they didn't know
Yeah.
what to do, and I go, "Dude, you got to report that." And they were like, "Well, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't want to get in trouble." And so I go, I'll report it. So I went and talked to. I mean, dude, I was like, it's kind of funny because looking back, I could see where I'm perceived as a narc, but I was like, dude, I felt more like V for Vendetta. Like I was just like, screw these people. I'm gonna fucking say something.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of stuff you narc on. Like, I don't think that makes you a narc. A narc is like so and so stole, jujubes, from the concession stand.
I remember Jim told me at one point I was his most trusted employee, and his reasoning was because whenever I go and complain to him about stuff, it never has anything to do with me. And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "You'll come complain about how somebody else was treated. You didn't like how this employee was treated, or you didn't like how this customer was treated." He goes, "You just have never come and like had selfish reasons for your complaints." And he goes, "It's really rare to have that." And so
Mhm.
it made him like, I should have abused it. I should have made up a bunch of stuff about people I didn't like. Um, like I had a golden ticket in my hand and I never cashed it out. Uh, but yeah. So we both worked at that same place for a few years. That reminds me, like we never found the golden footage of me slapping people at the theater.
Really?
You remember that you had filmed it and you could never find it
Yeah,
again.
that's
It
right.
was like, dude, you have footage of me because there. I remember it was a summer day in 2001 when I was still doing the slapping thing. There was just this ongoing joke where I just slap people and they'd
Yeah.
slap me and it became just really. It wasn't like really violent. It was just more like slapstick, stupid humor.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, you were like, "Oh, have you? I have it on film," and yeah, you never could find it again.
Yeah. Yeah, that camcorder went through a lot. And again, it's another thing. Like, I just brought a camcorder into work. No one said anything. No one cared.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
name one other job that wouldn't be shut down in like 5 minutes.
It's funny to think about a camcorder. Like
Yeah.
there's phones everywhere. We forget about how technology was different back then.
Yeah.
Like nobody was filming stuff like that. I mean, it was becoming more popular to have the more smaller digital cameras, but it was still pretty rare for people to have those. Um, so like we worked together. When did you quit?
I quit when I graduated high school. So 2002.
2002.
Yeah.
Um,
So I was there for 2 years.
2 years. Um, Yeah, that sounds about right. I quit at the end of 2002, came back in 2003 for a year, and then quit in 2004. Um, and then after 2002, what did you end up going off and doing? You went to school, right?
Yeah, I moved up north to the Tacoma area. Went to school in Olympia. Um, Ended up going to Japan for a year studying, and realized that I was happy there. Came back, finished graduation, realized I wasn't going anywhere with my major. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going back to Japan. Went back to Japan and kind of had a back and forth for a few years. And yeah, now I'm back here in Japan. Hopefully, finally, because moving to a different country is very tiring. I
Yeah,
don't want to play the back and forth that much anymore.
yeah, moving. I mean, even just moving like within town is annoying. I can't imagine moving across the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
Um, what did you end up getting your degree in?
I studied for video game design and theory.
Did you
And
ever use it for anything?
nope, I used my bachelor's to get a job teaching English.
There you go. There you go.
But no, I applied to, I think when I counted up, it was like over 70 companies over the course of like a year and a half. And every single one of them said, you need work experience. We aren't going to hire someone fresh. And I was like, well, I can't get work experience if you don't hire me. And I tried to like work on some little things with people like to pad the resume. And I got to go to like fun expos and stuff, and that was neat. You know, I got to go to like E3, if you know that. It's like a big video game expo they have in LA. I got to go to a cool game developers conference and meet a bunch of people. So the process of learning it was fun, but yet sadly never ended up to anything.
Um, you don't, didn't you have like some stories about meeting? Remember you telling me a few stories back in the day about meeting some like musicians or celebrities or something? Like, I don't remember the stories too well. But didn't you have like an interaction with a couple?
Yeah, musicians specifically, or because there's a couple like uh I'm trying to think of when it would have been that we were discussing them. I had a few so for a while I was working a lot of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the jobs was in the summer, I was basically a gopher, a production assistant for two concert venues, one in Seattle and one in Redmond, Washington. And every like Saturday, Sunday, I would be on site, and it was like morning to night. Like you get there at 8 a.m., you'd leave around midnight, but they gave you three meals
Mm-hmm.
and $200 for a while under the table, which is great. And then it couldn't be under the table, which was too bad. But still, you know, $200 and three meals and a lot of fun stories. Um, that was another one where you get to learn a lot about life and just have fun adventures. Like that's what I find is the most rewarding thing is, you know, have get a good story, get a good adventure out of something. But yeah, so I would do like I would fill the runner lists, you know, where it'd say like, oh, we want this for our dressing room, we want this for our van, da 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 da. So they'd give you what's called a rider list, and
Mm-hmm.
you'd have like, you know, and going into it, I expected like, oh, you know, you hear these stories of these old bands that like want the most specific things and da 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 da. And so I went in like fearing the old bands, and they ended up being the coolest, chillest people. It was
Mm-hmm.
the younger, newer bands that were a total pain in the ass, especially like white not R&B, but like white ska reggae groups, like specifically like Slightly Stupid or Cottonmouth Kings or Sublime, post Guy passing away. Um, those guys were a nightmare. Just there was always an issue. There was always something that had to be fixed. I was working with Slightly Stupid one day, and I would bring, he'd say, "Oh, we're doing a barbecue. We need this, this, this." And I would go get, like he wanted those aluminum foil trays that you like cook turkeys in,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, we need 4 of those." I'm like, "Okay, easy." So I'll go buy them, come back, and I give him the receipt, give him the change, give him the trays, go to leave. And he goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 what's this?" And I'm like, "What's the problem?" And he goes, "These were 89 cents a piece." I'm like, "Yep, there's the receipt." And he goes, "I can get these at Walmart for 49 cents." I'm like, "Yeah, but we're in Redmond. Walmart doesn't exist. They actually have a ban, so Walmart can't exist here." So it's like you get Whole Foods or you get the Queen Anne Thriftway. And this was the cheapest of those two. And he goes, "Take them back." And I go, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "Return them." I'm like, "You want me to return the aluminum foil trays?" He's like, "Yeah, go get our money back." So I had to go and like give a receipt. And the guy's like, "Is something wrong with them?" I'm like, "No, no, they're fine." He's like, "So why are you returning them?" The guy I bought them for said they're too expensive. And he's like, "They're 89 cents." I'm like, "Hey, I'm on this same level with you, man. I get it. You get it. He doesn't get it. I would love if we could just make this happen." And he's like, "Yeah, all right." And it was like all day. I was buying things and I had to like return like 5 or 6 different things where he's like, "It's too expensive. Send it back." I'm like, "Oh my God." Because they would keep, whatever money they didn't spend on food, they got rolled into their payment for the show. Like they got to keep the leftovers. So he
Oh,
wanted that extra $1.60 so bad. He's like, "No, no, no. We aren't gonna throw money at this."
um, here's a here's a story I butchered a long time ago, but you corrected me on, and it does kind of go back to the theater. But who was the pizza owner, pizza place owner, where you purposely dropped the hot dogs, kicked them around?
Papa
You,
Bill.
you got to tell this story.
Oh boy. This was another, I'll preface this with I was 16. Uh Obviously I had a more narrow view on health and safety, and my emotions overruled any sense of decency. But that said, yeah, Papa Bill sucked. He apparently knew one of our managers and used that so abusively, like always getting into shows for free, always getting food for free, always trying to like get stuff. And he had this weird kid that was like 10 years old, but looked like he was like 45. He had this old man face because the kid smoked, and Papa Bill like let him smoke with him. It was really unsettling to watch. Um, but he came in and he was like 20 minutes late to the last show. And he was like, "Hey, let me get a hot dog." And I'm like, "Sorry, man, concessions are closed. We're done for the night. Everything's shut down." And he's like, "Fuck you. I know Theo. Give me a hot dog." And I was like, "Dude, we don't like it's literally off. Like, there's nothing for me to give you. It's put away, it's in the fridge." He's like, "Do I need to call Theo right now?" And I was just like, "You know what? I'll get you a hot dog. No problem." So I go in the back, and for people who didn't work there, the back room was a long, narrow area that kind of matched the concession stand. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like 2 long, narrow hallways. So I went into one door down at the end and got a hot dog and dropped it on the back floor of the break of the back room, and then kicked it all the way down the hall to the next door. And then I came back out and I was like, "Oh, sorry, I have to get a bun. One sec." And I got a bun and I went back to the back room and kicked it all the way back the other way down the back room, and then put it in the bun and microwaved it and then gave it to him. And he's like, "Was that so hard?" I'm like, "It really wasn't. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, have a good night."
Yeah, I remember this one time you you went back behind concessions, like the not the actual concessions, but the room behind it.
Mhm.
And you were like, "Damn it, God damn it, he's here, God damn it!" And I go, who's here?" And you're like, um, "Papa Bill, God damn it, that son of a bitch is here." And you're like, "That asshole." You started telling me stories how like he used to like be like, didn't he used to hit on your mom when she was working and just like do creepy things
Yeah.
and shit. And
Super skeezy dude.
as you're telling me this story, I think her name was Jessica, I want to say. She comes out into the back room. She goes, "Oh my God, I have the biggest asshole customer. He's just a prick." And we were like, "Wait, what's he look like?" And he's like, "He's wearing blah blah blah." And you're like, and you looked out there and you're like, "That's Papa Bill, that son of a bitch." It was like that's where laugh would be like the weird stories with, you know, returning customers and whatnot. Um,
I remember, and I'm sure you saw them, the couple that wore like the NASA outfits and they would come on the weekends
I
and they were
don't.
like matching silver NASA like zip up like track suits. And I always remember, I was like, wow, that's so cool. Like they must come here on the weekends. I mean, it's not that far from California. Maybe they're visiting family and like, or maybe it's a seasonal thing, but literally every weekend they'd come in their NASA track suits. And then finally, it was like a few months before I quit, and I was like, "Hey, I gotta ask, because I see you guys all the time. Like, how long have you been at NASA?" And they're like, "Oh, we don't work at NASA." I'm like, "Oh, did you in the past?" And they're like, "No," and then just left it at that. And I was like, "Okay, here's your popcorn. Enjoy your show."
Dude, I remember this one time I had this employee, or not this employee, but this customer who he was being really fucking rude to me. And I had just been, it was when we switched out the regulators. Remember you
Mhm.
had the Pepsi and we switched to Coke, and we were supposed to, when we had a refill, we were just refilling the old cups. And
Yeah,
eventually they started giving us shit saying, "Hey, we don't have Pepsi anymore. Pepsi will only refill it if they swap cups and get a
yeah.
cup, Coke cup, and then they can refill the Coke cup." And this lady was just being fucking really rude to me, just telling me, and then she wanted to talk to her manager, and the manager explained it to him, and then after he walked off, I go, did you figure out, do you want to go ahead and swap the cups or something?" And she goes, "Yeah, I already said yes. Can you do your job, please? Can you blah blah blah?" And me and you were both kind of saying what we were polite, we're nice, but we had that little tick where it was like once it went a little too far, we would. And so I'm over there getting her drink or whatever, and then I go, "So just by chance, I thought I'd ask you, what movie are you seeing tonight?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm seeing Passion of the Christ." And I already knew that's what she was saying. But I go, "Imagine that." Okay. Imagine that. Wow. And the lady got really quiet. She apologized to me. It's just like, I've just had a really stressful day. I don't mean to take it out on you, blah, blah. It was like I was setting that up a little bit because I was like, dude, how the fuck can you treat people that way? You know?
God,
And
I was so annoyed when that movie was in theaters. I remember like I was cleaning theaters at the time, and that was the one you'd go in and there'd be people there all the way to the end of the credits, like doing this thing like you do in church.
mhm.
And the rule was like if there's people there, you can't start
Yeah,
cleaning.
yeah.
So just hold it back, and you're just like, fuck, okay, we get it. You're happy. You're feeling the love of your Lord. Like, can you please go do it outside? Like, I have 8 more theaters after this, and then I get to walk over to Taco Bell and have a burrito. Like, I just want to finish my job.
Yeah, they did that for a little bit where they would like, I mean, Passion of the Christ was a big movie, like a nationally big movie, but I mean they would do like the religious movies. We had like
Yeah.
Left Behind and stuff.
Yeah.
And they would book out certain auditoriums for just religious movies.
Wasn't Carmen the Champion? Wasn't that religious?
I don't remember that one.
It was like a boxer movie, and I remember it was like really like poorly promoted. Like no one knew what it was. And it was like really violent, but then also had like some sort of religious message. Like
Hmm.
my main memory was that was the first and only time I got to put the letters outside the building.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, because I told them, I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that. And they're like, okay, Holland, now's your chance. And so I got to go do it. And I was doing Carmen the Champion, and I realized I could rearrange the words to say ram me. And I was like, so it said ram me the champion. And I was like, hey, quick, get a photo, get a photo. And I was like telling whoever I was with at the time, I was like, quick, take a picture, take a picture. And as they were taking a picture, I was like this. And Jim walked out and he's like, how's it going, Holland? I was like, hey, Jim. He's like, you mind fixing that? And I was like, oh, geez. Oh, I misspelled. Let me fix that right now. I'm sorry.
Dude, I wish people could like have like some sort of reference point for what like how Jim acted. It was a lot like the boss on Office Space, like a
Mm.
shorter version. Just he was always like, am I not right?
Yeah, you're very right. Just when you said shorter, I was like, oh, in many ways.
I remember this one day. It was thunderstorming and raining and everything. This was like November 2001, whatever. And we had Harry. It said Harry Potter, and the new Harry Potter movie's coming out. It's the first movie. And
Mhm.
Jim goes out there and he goes, Rob, can you do me a favor? Can you go out there and add in and the Sorcerer's Stone to each side of the okay. So I go out there and it's pouring down rain and I'm just
Yeah.
like moving all these goddamn letters and I'm just getting soaked and customers are like, "What are you? That's dangerous. It's cold and rainy." And when I go, "Yeah, yeah, I'm doing it. Love my job." And then at some point, one of the managers run out and was like, "Here, I got you something." Uh, and it wasn't to get me warm. They just didn't want the uniform to get wet. And it was a garbage bag with holes punched out of the side and the top. I was like, "Oh, thanks." I put on this black garbage bag and I'm still out there. And when I finish both sides, he comes out here and he goes, looks at it and he goes, "Oh, it's good job, good job." He goes, can you also put gift certificates now available on each side?" And I was like, and then and then I finished that, and then he asked me, like I'm soaked. He asked me to sweep the parking lot. And he goes, "Yeah, we got a lot of leaves out there. Can you sweep the leaves up?" And I go, "Do you want me to just get ahead of it and just pull the rest of them off the trees and just he goes, "Excuse me." And I was like, and I ended up telling him, I go, "Well, just to let you know, my family hopes, they expect me to be alive for Thanksgiving next month, or Thanksgiving was coming up." And I go, he goes, "What's that supposed to mean?" I go, "I've been outside for 7 hours in the cold rain." I go, I mean, pneumonia isn't a fun thing, so he's like, okay, I didn't realize it was raining so bad out there. But
Uh,
a lot of people had their issues, but I actually like Jim. I think he was going through his own personal stuff. Um,
oh, he definitely was. And yeah, he was, I never had a problem with him. Like anytime he would reprimand me or have a talk with me, I always deserved it. Like it was never like him having a power trip or something. It was me doing some dumb bullshit and him being like, Holland, this is a place of business. I'm like, yes, sir. Sorry, sir. I feel a little bad about it now, but some of the times that I would get uh more in trouble, like definitely crossing the line from, having a talking to maybe some action is taken. I definitely used, like, I knew he had a relationship. Uh, well, I don't want to get into it, but he had, there were things I could talk to him about that he wanted to talk about. And he'd be like, yo, this is really bad. This is, I don't know what we're gonna do with you. And I'd be like, oh, so how is so and so? How are you? How are things going with that? How are you feeling? He's like, well, I don't really want to talk about that now. I'm like, well, I mean, we're both here. It seems like a good time to discuss this. And he's like, well, I haven't been talking to so and so lately, and I'm a little worried and concerned. I'm like, have you thought about reaching out to them, or like, what do you? And I would like use that to get his mind off of what I did to get myself in trouble.
there was one time with him where the paychecks were late. Paychecks
Mm,
came like a day late or whatever. And I remember going in there and asking about it. And he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. There was like we got notified they were gonna be a day late. Sorry, blah blah." And and I was bummed about it. But he ended up he was like looking at me weird. And then at some point he goes, are you doing okay, Rob? Are you okay? Like, I'm sorry they're late, but are you gonna be okay? And I go, yeah, yeah, it's all right. He goes, are you okay, like money wise? And I go, well, I go, uh, and then he pulled out a 50 and let me borrow a 50.
Wow.
And I didn't even ask for it. He just
Yeah.
basically offered it. And I remember being really surprised. You
Yeah.
don't see that. And um, the last time, I want to say it was 2014 or 15. I was at it was whenever the Force Awakens came out.
Oh, okay. Like 2000.
No, no, no.
Oh, Force Awakens. Sorry. I was thinking uh I was thinking the first one.
The Phantom Menace that came out in
Phantom.
99.
Yeah. Was that 99?
Yeah.
Jesus.
No, I saw him behind the counter cleaning something, like he's doing inventory, and I goes, "Oh shit, it's Jim." So I went over and I was like, somebody was like, "Can I help you?" And I go, "Oh, I'm just waiting for James over there." And they were like, "James, was it me and you the only person that ever called him James, or was it?"
Think so, yeah.
Um, and then some manager came up, and I also said, and so they went and got him, and he was like cleaning his hands, and he stood up and turned and looked at me, and he got a big smile on his face, and then he went
Oh.
around and came around, and he goes, I go, James Troffler. And he goes, Rob Ryan. And I go, you remember me after all these years? And he goes, how can I put it? He goes, you're a very memorable character. He goes, I don't see myself forgetting. And it was funny because there were several other people that had been in the theater over the years who had said hi to him and
Mhm.
approached him. And he'd be like, I don't remember you. I'm sorry. So like, when I told that story to them, they were like, what the fuck? He doesn't. I go, but to be fair, like I also pranked him quite a bit and always pulled shit on him.
Yeah, you gave him a lot of reasons to remember you.
I always remember the story where he called me up to the office for like 3 hours. And he was basically asking me a rundown about how a bunch of things were going on, a bunch of rumors, and he'd heard like some, bad shit going on. And I was honest with him, told him everything that I knew. And then when I was leaving, he goes, "Oh, can you do me a favor?" He goes, "I want to keep this between me and you. So when you go downstairs, can you tell him just come up with some excuse as to why you were talking for 3 hours? Like, come up with something." Like, okay, I think I got a good one. So I go downstairs, and if you remember, I used to always walk up to concessions when I was working, and I'd say stupid shit like, "I'd like to order your finest lemon lime beverage." It was always like whatever, Sprite or Sierra Mist or something.
Yeah.
But I always say lemon lime beverage. And somebody asked me like why I was up there for 3 hours, and I said, "Well, I go, apparently there's been some concerns about our lemon lime beverage, and he heard rumors that I was, that I consumed quite a bit, and I could give him some thoughts on it. So yeah, we had to go over some stuff about our lemon lime beverage, and it's a couple hours later. He came and found me when I was ushering. You told him that I talked to you for 3 hours about Sprite, and I was like they don't expect a thing. Uh, Oh my god, dude. Yeah, I have to write a book about all this shit. There was the time that I don't know if you were working there this time, but the time when I had a black eye, and I was off work, but I was seeing a movie, and I told a couple people, I go, dude, do me a favor, like you see Jim, tell him like why'd you do that to Rob? Like why'd you hit Rob? And I just want to like get his reaction. And so a couple people did that, and then he came and found me and had security pull me out of the auditorium. And he was like, "What are you doing going around telling people that I hit you?" And I started going like this, and I go, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to, And he goes, Rob, he goes, I'm already under investigation from other stuff. He goes, you're going around telling people I gave you a black eye, and I go, I'm sorry, Jim, just like whatever you want, whatever you want. He goes, don't go around telling people that I hit you. And I go, just whatever you want, just don't do it again, okay? I just don't. and then he ended up kicking me out of the audit. That he told me he was revoking my movie seeing privileges that evening, and so he sent me home. But I kept the security didn't know what to do. They were like, I was like, just security's here, just don't hit me again.
Oh God.
Dude, yeah. I don't know. I think on some levels I hated my life on a very high level back then, and I just wanted to fuck with shit. Like just whatever extreme stupid joke there was, I wanted to just so it's kind of another kind of sharp turn with this, but you moved up by Tacoma, and at some point I moved up to Olympia, and I remember
Mhm.
us hanging out up there, and your dad owned that really old ass house that was haunted.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember? Because I actually have one of these episodes I've done is talking about ghosts.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you want to tell any of these stories about that house?
Sure, yeah. It was like at the time we lived in it, it was already like 112 years old, something like that. And it had been like refurbished and remodeled. And like, so there was like crawl spaces and rooms that were like boarded up. Like when we found the original blueprints, there was like a crawl space from the garage to my room. And it was literally just like the wall of my room had a tunnel in it that I didn't know about.
Wasn't there a slaves' quarters?
Could be. Yeah.
I
I
think
don't
you
know for
told me
sure,
that you
but I
found
think
something where there was an area like, and you were like, yeah, dude, this is like a slaves' quarters, or like it was like something like that. And there was
it
like
was,
bars on the windows, and everything was like an old wood on the inside.
yeah, there was a room with like it was like a hidden away, like really old rickety room. Like I had theories, but nothing I could confirm.
Oh.
It was very bizarre and weird. Um, and yeah, there used to be, we had like a wraparound porch to the front door, and you could always see and hear when someone would come up because there was like these windows that, all the way around that wraparound. And of course, it's these windows that are like so old that the glass has actually started like melting and it's like thicker at the bottom because it's
Mm-hmm.
like sinking down. Um, and You would see someone walk by, and because they would obscure the light of the landing, and then you'd also hear their footsteps because it was like a creaky wooden porch,
Mm-hmm.
and the dog would start barking, and you know to answer the door. And it would happen at night where the light would get obscured and someone would start walking and the dog would bark and I'd go and there's no one there. And then it kind of happened enough that at a certain time of night, even the dog stopped reacting because the dog would just kind of look up and be like, oh, it's this fucking thing again. And I would just start ignoring it too because it's like, well, it's not hurting me, whatever it is. And I'm watching TV. So it's, it'll just go for a little walk, I guess.
I remember thinking that house was really cool. Like you guys had that yard, and didn't you have like a fire pit back there?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little fire pit. There's a big stretch of land. It was a cool place. And there was that little like tool shed that got turned into a shack in the yard.
Um, yeah, I remember hanging out with you for like that little brief time we were both living up there. We had you showed me Western State, the old Western State uh mental hospital or whatever
Yeah.
was left of it. And I remember you coming over for a party I had in Olympia, and you brought those Japanese exchange students.
Yeah.
And didn't wasn't one of your friends Korean, and he got really drunk? Do you remember this where he got really drunk and started like yelling at the exchange students about like all this like cultural history about like you guys used to cut our ears off and pickle them, or just this like absurd like history between Japan and Korea.
Yeah.
And then he disappeared, and then he came back a couple hours later and said he threw up at the temple. And
Yeah.
all I could think of is the landlord's house that was like way in the back of the property. I was like, I hope he didn't go there and throw up. Because the property was like 9 acres, and the landlord was living way towards the back. Um, that was a cool
I,
house.
I don't know how he could have made it that far, but yeah, he was gone for like 2 hours or so.
Yeah,
And like,
and it's just forest. Like unless you're
yeah,
walking along the main road, it's like pretty thick forest, right?
and
Um,
he was loaded. I mean, I he could barely walk straight. He couldn't even stand upright.
mm-hmm. And
And yeah, he was like, I threw up at the temple. I was like, I don't know what that means. Are you gonna throw up again? No. Okay, go lay down.
um, yeah, so then you went over to Japan and you met your wife. That was
Mhm.
a cool story. And then do you want to tell that story about the whole I always thought it was a cool story. You have some cool
Oh yeah.
stories. The
Thanks.
story
Yeah.
about the person that was it a fortune teller or who was it that told you to that you guys need to break up and ask each other out or
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, before that, so I was working in Nintendo. I was at the Nintendo call center. It was kind of like my last ditch effort. I was like, maybe I can get into a design position from the call center. And I was there for like 9 months and was just ready to give up. I wasn't seeing it go anywhere. And my friend told me, "Oh, you should go back to Japan. You can teach English." And I said, "Oh, well, I have a degree in game design theory." And he's like, "It doesn't matter. Like it's a as long as you have a bachelor's, you can go over there." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I started applying to schools and I hear back from two of them. One is in Osaka, which is a big, big city, and one is in this little village town, like literally a train stop called Nakatsu that I couldn't even find on Google at the time. Um, and the one in Osaka was like above average pay. They covered your apartment rental, um, and you were like downtown, and it was like a big city. It was really nice. And I learned like so companies here they usually have a staff page and they show pictures and names of all their employees, and I don't know why, but a lot of the companies do that here for some reason. So I pulled up the staff page of that place and I was like, it was all these old men. And I had, when I was studying here, I had some experiences with old Japanese men that I didn't care to recreate, or I was like, ah, boy, I don't think I want to get myself into this situation. Um, and then I checked the other school, and the other school was paying like kind of standard for the entry level position. I had to pay for my own apartment out of it, and it's in this town that I couldn't find any information on. So I go to the school page and I look at the staff and I see this girl and I literally go, "Oh, she's cute. I'll work there." And that was
that's
literally
enough
my
of
that was my whole deciding factor. I was like, "That girl's cute. I'll work there." And I went to the school. I met said cute girl and we started talking and started dating. And yeah, we got to the point where we were going to get married. And this fortune teller told us, like, because of the day that you got together, your marriage will end in failure. You have to break up and get back together, even if it's just a day. And I was like, okay, sure. Um, so we are having this discussion. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'll break up with you. And she was like, what? No, no, I'm gonna break up with you. I'm like, no, 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 I'll break up with you. And she's like, no, no one's ever broken up with me. I'm like, well, there's first time for everything. And the idea was that because she worked later than me, she was gonna come over after work, and then we'd like have a meal together, and then break up, and then get back together on Monday. Um, and I was leaving for the day and I was like, "Oh, I forgot my lunch bag on my desk. Can you grab it for me?" And she's like, "Oh, sure." So I'm putting my shoes on because you have to, take your shoes off. So I'm putting my shoes on at the entrance and I have like one foot out the door and she brings me my lunch bag and I go, "Thanks so much. I think we should see other people. Bye." And she was like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm breaking up with you. Bye." I like ran away and she's like, "No, no, I'm breaking up with you." I'm like, "Too late. I broke up with you." But yeah, then we got married, and then we moved back to the States. I knew that I wasn't going to be an English teacher my whole life. I needed to do something else. And a friend turned me on to graphic design. Um,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
there. So like one part of that story, I was, um, wasn't it? Sorry, I'm like throwing your old story back at you.
No, no.
Wasn't it something where like you guys ended up creating a new like date for like you guys are back together, and it turned out to be the same date that your grandfather. I think there was some history there with your grandfather. I think it was the day that you remember
Oh,
where you told me the story about him having the heart attack and
right, right.
was holding you.
Yeah.
I'm like taking over your story. I'm like, no, you don't know your life as well. Let me explain it.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking it was a really cool story, and I just
Yeah. Boy, honestly, I don't remember the connection to that.
it was like the same day that I think your grandpa passed or something like that. It was the anniversary of his passing, I think.
That could definitely be it because that would have been, I think I was just a few months old, so that would have been in like April or so. So yeah, that could be. I think that would line up with like, yeah, the anniversary of him passing away. Um, yeah. Oh yeah. So that too. Going back, let's add more ghost stories.
More ghost stories.
Um, you can never have too many ghost stories. Yeah, when I was just a few months old, my great grandfather was taking care of me, him and his wife, and he was holding me in a rocking chair, and his heart exploded. Like he had literally a heart attack so bad that the muscles ripped his heart to pieces, like actually tore it. Um, and when it happens that aggressively, like that's it, you're dead. There's no like clutching your chest, call a doctor. Like you're fucking done. And he should have pitched forward and crushed me, and that would have been it. But somehow he stood up and he walked across the room and set me on a table and then fell over and died. And I always had like, even though, obviously I was 2 months old, I can't really say I knew him, but I felt like I always had an attachment to him. And there would be things when I would talk to my grandmother, I would say things or do things, and she would be like, "Oh, he always used to say that, or he always used to do that." Like, why did you call me that name? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, that's he called me that. Like really weird coincidences like that. And then growing up too, there was a voice that I would hear that was like, I guess a conscience for lack of a better, not a conscience, like a voice that would say like, hey, this is a bad idea, you're going to get in trouble here, like this isn't safe, that kind of inner monologue thing. And it always had a very distinct voice. And then my great grandfather, he was a big like, he loved technology, he loved like advancements and things and stuff, and he was one of the first people in his area to get like a record maker, so you could actually like record onto blank records, and it would like scratch it in, and you'd like play into this huge opening, I guess.
Hmm.
And my grandma had a bunch of these, and she's like, "Oh, you got to listen to these." He would like make these in our home of like him singing and playing guitar, and like him telling stories and stuff. Like it was his way to record this history. And so she played some for me, and it was the same exact voice that I grew up hearing. Like perfect. I was just like, "Holy shit!" Like that's the voice. That's the voice I always hear. And yeah, that one always threw me for a loop.
Yeah, I'm really liking that story when you told it to me. Um, yeah, all my interactions with your family over the years has always been really positive. Like I have high respect for your family.
Oh,
I
thank
mean,
you.
you not so much, but your family, very yeah.
The
Um,
surrounding people.
yeah. Another story I wanted to get into. So like we never did this, but me and you had planned to go on a tour where we were gonna go to bars and try to get as many bar fights as possible.
Yeah, the
And
Hume Ryan bar fight tour.
yeah, the we had this idea.
Yep.
Uh,
So
you
the
know,
idea,
go ahead,
oh,
say.
go ahead. The idea was that we would go and get in a bar fight in every state, And the rules were that the one, we couldn't throw the first punch. We had to aggravate someone to the point that they would start a fight with us.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had to receive the start of the fight. And then the other rule was that the fight had to be based on something about the state. It couldn't be just like a, oh, you're ugly, da da da. Like if it's California and we're in San Francisco, we have to like shit talk the Golden Gate Bridge to the point of someone wanting to fight us. Or if we're in like Nevada, like we have to shit talk the desert until someone's going to fight us over it. Like it had to be something specific to the state. And I don't know where it went, but we had a good list. We were starting to like make a decent list of like what each thing would be for the states.
Me and you had a lot of plans back then. We had that plan. Do you remember the movie we were talking about making where we were gonna combine Honey I Shrunk the Kids with Jurassic Park? Do you remember that?
Yeah. I forgot about that.
It was gonna be
Oh
like
man.
really, really tiny, tiny dinosaurs and um uh come from Jurassic Park, would be the main guy. But we had a lot of stupid ongoing like jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was the I'm not even gonna repeat it, but remember the one about having the hamster in your hand? We came up with that while we were sitting about to donate plasma and to go. We were just sitting there for like 6 hours and just coming up with all sorts of like story. Wasn't Alex with us? And
I
it was just
think so,
absurdity.
yeah.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
man.
good times.
Good times.
And what so what are you doing now? Like, what do you do now for like your job?
So now I'm the art director for a trivia company called Geeks Who Drink. They do bar trivia in the States and have a few different avenues of quiz and stuff. I've been with them for, oh boy, 12 years, I think
Mm-hmm.
now. I'm in my 12th year with them. And yeah, I really like it. It's a fun company. I love the work. I love the variety of it. That's something that graphic design always appealed to me is if I'm doing the same job too often, I get bored. And graphic design is always a new challenge every day. So
What was that old company that you had going on that had you had like a business card and it had a picture of like Bill Hicks and like oh, who was it? Hunter S. Thompson.
oh yeah, that was a Dead Idle Design. That was when I
Yes.
tried to do my own. Yeah, I
You
had
still
a
have that
few
on YouTube,
years.
right?
I think so. I'm sure
Because
there's
I
a
think
couple old
it's
videos
still
there.
subscribed to it.
Yeah. Yeah, for about 2 years, I tried to have my own design business and quickly realized that I don't like the business side of a business. I just like making things. Um, and had enough experiences where I was like, yeah, I don't want to own my own business. I'm okay working with someone, like working as an employee.
Yeah, I remember you showing a couple commercials that you kind of worked on, or um,
Yeah.
was there a movie you were like, was it a commercial or a movie or something you were had a brief part in? Or no, was it a voiceover?
Here or
I think it might have
domestic?
been there.
Yeah, I did. So I do some voice work in Japan here. I've done I think 3 projects now that I've been on. Um, and it's just a side thing. Like it was like, I've always wanted to try voice acting or voiceover work. Like it's something that's always interested me. Um, so I found an agency and an agent, and I've been applying to them for I don't know like 3 years now.
Uh-huh.
And it's a hit or miss thing, and it's not going to pay any bills, but it's always a fun experience. I just did one I don't know, like 3 months ago, I think, that's in like a museum that's just like 2 hours south of here. It's like the opening when you go into the museum. It's like the intro video of this exhibit, and I'm like
Oh, cool.
narrating it. Yeah. Um, that was a really fun challenge because they recorded it. They wanted a Japanese one and an English one, and they already recorded the Japanese one. And there was something with the footage, like some error or something, where they couldn't recut the footage for it.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed me to say the English part in the spaces that the Japanese guy talked. They couldn't
Mm-hmm.
recut it. And there's a lot of things when you translate English to Japanese. Some sentences are a lot longer and some are a lot shorter. So they're like, okay, we need you to fit, this 8 word sentence into 3 seconds. And so I would just follow this light, and like the light would blink once to start talking and once to stop talking. And I was like live narrating to the video to try to fit the English into these parts. And it was fun. Like it was a challenge, but it was cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Um, so we're probably getting closer to how much time do you have left, do you think?
Um, I probably have like another 30 minutes, I think.
Do you have any topic suggestions? Do you have any stories you want to tell or
Boy, I mean, you got me thinking about ghost stuff now, but if you've already done a ghost episode,
well, yeah, but
um,
those are between me and my friend Nick. So like if you have
okay.
your stories,
Yeah,
um
I definitely have one more I can share. And I just, it was always fun to talk ghosts with you and like spirits and stuff. Like it's always a tricky question when people say, because I don't believe in like a heaven or hell or anything like that. And people say, but you believe in ghosts? I'm like, well,
can I
it
intervene for one
seems,
second?
yeah, of
I just
course.
remembered this. I forgot about this. Do you remember when we were trying to astral plane and communicate with each other?
Yeah.
And we were talking about it. We were having both talking about each other having weird dreams. You had the dream where there was like a tree or at a party, and then you ended up you said it happened in real life later on, and you recognized it
Hmm.
from your dream. And so I had this dream that I astral projected, out of my body, and I was flying, and I was like, oh shit, I gotta communicate with Holland. I'm astral projecting. So I fly over to where the highway is, and I'm flying on the highway and I'm like, I gotta get there. I don't know how much time I have. And then all of a sudden I realized I was going I-5 south and I was like, fuck. And so I flipped around and I was like, dude, I was like going the wrong direction for that long. And so I'm trying to make up time by flying up north to Tacoma. And I woke up before I got to your house and I was like, motherfucker, like, but no, that's just a random memory I wanted to throw in there before I forgot it. But yeah, continue with your
Yeah.
story.
No, but yeah, I love the discussion of it. Like I feel like, I'm willing to believe that there's something there, and that if a ghost, even if it's not a spirit, like maybe a ghost is just a leftover amount of energy, maybe it can't talk to you, but maybe it's just a certain something gets repeated enough in a place. Maybe there's like residual leftovers of something there
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be an echo of that repetition, not like, oh, hello, I'm the ghost of da da da. I've been here for 40 years. It's like, no, this guy used to, you know, slam this door every day. And he lived in this house for 60 years and he died. And something about that energy, like the door just shuts sometimes. And, I think there can be echoes of something. Um, but I think my best ghost story was a house that I was in. Sorry, let me just check this. Uh, okay, sorry, I just got to respond to this really quick. Um, Sorry about that.
No worries.
So when my father, I think I was about 10, and my dad was in the process of like, he sold a house and got a townhouse. And there was this thing where I don't know the laws around it, but basically, like you get money from selling a house that has to go back into a house. Like it has to specifically be used toward the purchase of another property. and he was ending this period of time in which he had to use that money. So he ended up getting this little pink house. It was like a little 2 bedroom pink house with a basement. And we moved in. It was like a last minute purchase. And I remember, like, from the moment we moved in there, we were just uncomfortable. Like, I never felt good in that house. Um, and at the time, like, it's the story is kind of a two-parter because the way I experienced it was as a child. Like, I just always felt uncomfortable. Um, I didn't feel good in the living room. The two areas that freaked me out the most were the kitchen and the basement. Um, to the point where, like, if I needed something, like, it at a certain time I could be in the kitchen, but when it got like too much daytime or too much nighttime, I couldn't be in there. So I would like race in, grab something, then eat like somewhere else in the room. Or I just wouldn't eat because I was like, I don't want to go in the kitchen. Um, and then there was like, as you entered the kitchen, uh, the door to the basement was literally like right in front of it. So
Mm-hmm.
like you'd open the door to the kitchen, take 2 steps, and here's the door to the basement. And if I open the door, sometimes I'd open the door to the kitchen and the door to the basement would be wide open. And those days I would just close the door to the kitchen. I'm like, we're not eating today. We're not going in there. Um, and then there'd be weird things like one day I went into the house and I noticed the door to the kitchen was gone. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, just off the hinges, not there. And then I go to the kitchen and then all our cupboard doors are gone. And I was like, huh, that's weird. And I asked my dad, and he was like, oh, I'm repainting them. I took them off to paint them and then I'll put them back up. And I was like, okay, never thought twice about it. And then one day, my dad, I was in my room asleep, and there was a door. The only two rooms that had doors were my bedroom and the bathroom. And basically, like, my dad's room was over on the left and mine was over on the right, and there was a hallway from like door to door.
Mm-hmm.
And then across wise there was like a bathroom in the middle, and then the other way went into the rest of the house. So he could see into my room from his bed. Like, he could see my door because the way his bed was set up. Anyways, one night I was asleep and he came bursting into my room, like hit my door open. And I should say one thing. He always said, don't close your door. Like, when you go to sleep, don't close your door. So he hits my door open. And my first thought is, I'm like, what's going on? Of course, later I was like, why is my door closed? But he came in and he was like, Holland, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And like shaking me. I'm like, yes, yeah, I'm fine. What's going on? What's happening? And he like stood up for a second. He goes, nothing. Go back to sleep. And he like left my room. And I was like, what the fuck? And of course, I go back to sleep. Uh, and then we stayed in that house. Like, it was bad. Like, I would wear stinky clothes because I wouldn't wash my clothes because the laundry was in the basement. And I was like, I'm not going in the basement. And I wouldn't eat. And it was just a mess. I was only there for a year and then ended up moving to my mom's house. And that's how I ended up in Vancouver.
Okay.
It was because things weren't going well there. Like, I wasn't doing well socially. I wasn't doing well in school. I wasn't sleeping. Um, and then, so that's kind of the end of part one. And then, like maybe 15 years ago or so, I was at the bar with my dad. I was home visiting and talking to him. And I was like, you remember that house? Then that was fucking weird. And my dad was like, yeah, I guess you're old enough. I can start telling you. I'm like, tell me what? And he told me that, so when we bought the house, there was an old lady that owned it. And apparently she was like super mean. Like, all the neighbors hated her and she hated everyone and she was just shitty to everybody. And she died in my dad's bedroom. And he said, yeah, when I'd always wake up in the middle of the night and she'd be in the corner of the bedroom staring at me like angry. And like, I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, she'd be in like the corner and like just looking at me fucking furious every single night. I'm like, what did you do? He's like, I rolled over. I mean, what are you gonna do? I bought the house. I'm like, Dad.
Jesus.
And he's like, yeah, she was not cool. And he goes, remember the cabinet doors and stuff? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, you took them off to paint them. And he goes, we never put them back on. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess we didn't. He said he went in there one day and all the cabinet doors were like going pa 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 pa, like slamming open and closed on their own. So he just took the doors off. That was his solution. He threw them away.
Jeez.
And I was like, so what happened that night when you came into my room? And he said, oh, well, uh, I woke up in the middle of the night like I did every night. And I looked over to see the old lady and she wasn't there. And that was weird because it was the first time she'd ever not been there. And he said he rolled over and she was in my room and she was like smiling, like really mean smile. And she shut the door to my room with her inside. And that's when he got up and ran into my room. And I was like, thank you for not telling me that when I was 10 years old.
Jeez.
So, and then I was like, well, did anyone else see this? And he's like, oh, yeah. I remember he had a bunch of girlfriends at the time, like he'd be dating girls. And he's like, yeah, the girls would eventually see her. And I'd tell them to just, roll over, ignore it. And they wouldn't, they would leave because they didn't want to be there. It freaked them out. So I'd start dating another girl and then she'd see the old lady.
Jeez.
And so then what my dad did before he sold the house, because he's like, I'm going to flip it. He completely like redid the whole house. Like he blew out the wall to that bedroom and then put these like French doors and then stairs that led into the backyard. And he's like, yeah, while I was doing this construction, every night she looked meaner and meaner, like more and more angry that I was fucking with her house. And I was like, and you didn't stop? He's like, no, fuck her. If she's mad, then I'm doing the right thing. And then he's like, eventually, like, she just stopped showing up. I was like, wow, kind of a dick to that ghost, but all right.
Dude, yeah, that's a pretty wild story. Um, it's not the same, but when I was about 6 years old, um, I remember waking like I went to bed and I had this Sesame Street blanket, and it was kind of like a fuzzy blanket or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I went to bed, and I swear something grabbed my feet, and I yelled for my parents. And I mean, I got scared a lot as a kid. I was like a scaredy cat, but it was very very rare that I ever yelled at my parents like that. Like yelling that something's going on. And I remember this
Yeah.
one night, like it probably 3 times in an hour. I yelled, "Mom, something grabbed my foot!" Blah blah blah. And she came in there. She looked under the bed, looked in the closet. She says, "There's nothing in here." Blah blah blah. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next day, my parents couldn't find me. Like they were like, I think my dad had went to work, but my mom was like going through, freaking out, couldn't find me. She finally found me. I was asleep in my closet, and it was one of those sliding door closets, and I was laying sideways inside the closet. And
Whoa.
dude, like, I mean, as a little kid that was a scaredy cat, I don't think I got up in the middle of the night and went in my closet and
Yeah.
decided to fall asleep. And
This will be a good spot.
yeah, but that always stuck in my head um growing up. I think that was the first time I started wondering if, I saw stuff that was real or whatever. Um yeah, dude, me and you had a lot of good conversations. We talk about Art Bell, we talk about UFOs, talk about ghosts and stuff. Um
I remember if it's something you want to share, the story you had about the dream of the boy in the woods. Did you talk about that one?
I don't think I told that story. I I don't know if I did it on my paranormal video, but I don't think I did, but I'll just tell it again if people haven't. So one of the houses I lived in Olympia, um, it was I've told some stories about this house. I just don't know if I told this specific story. So I moved into this house, and it was me and two friends. And one of my first nights in the house, um, I heard a woman's voice right outside my door say, "Hey, Michael." And I looked up, like I was wide awake. I was sitting on my bed drinking water, and nobody was there. And it was like, it was a really, really close voice, like somebody 2 feet from me. And it was a clear as day voice. And Steven was asleep in his room, and John was asleep in his room downstairs. And I just was like, yeah, dude, that wasn't in my head. I just heard that. And then a night or two later, I had this dream. And the dream was I was walking around the house, and there was a little boy, and he wasn't saying anything, but he was calling me. He kept calling me over, and he was pointing at this corner of the property, and he kept pointing, and he was like freaking out, like scared. And I was like, "What are you scared of? What's going on?" Blah blah blah. And then I kept looking, and I go, "There's nothing there. There's nothing there." And then in my, I'm in my dream. I'm looking a little closer, and there's something there, but it's like it's within the shade of the trees because there was trees all around the property, and it was like breathing, and it was like the way it was moving. I was like, dude, there's something there, and it's looking right at me. And then once like the chill in my dream, like I just got a chill telling the story, but it came right after me, and the boy started running, and it started chasing me and the boy, and it got, I don't know, got close, and then I woke up. And I remember yeah, just having a couple other weird incidents there. I thought in the other episode I told the story about that same place we had um we heard we would so the front steps were really creaky. Could hear somebody come up the front steps, front door really creaky. And I was in the living room with John, and I was watching TV, and he was cooking in the kitchen, and it was all one room. It was all, like when you have all that stuff in one room, there's no corners to turn around or anything. And the front door was slightly out of my view because of where the stairs were located and where I was sitting in the living room. And I heard someone walk up the front door steps, and I heard the front door, and then John, as he's cooking, he turns to look, and then his face just gets white, and he just looks like terrified. And I'm thinking like, well, dude, who's here? Who's that? And he looks at me and he goes, dude, nobody's there. And I go, fucking with me, dude. We both just heard somebody walk up, and it was loud. And
Mhm.
and he goes, dude, he goes, I heard that too. And we both just got like really shook up because we know what we heard. And then over the next few weeks, uh he stopped going to college, and he would like drink all day and then sleep or he would stay up all night drinking and then sleep all day. And he didn't have a job. And I had this one morning where I had this, it was like a kind of a pseudo dream where it was like, the dream was that there was this lady downstairs in the kitchen, and she was like upset about the kitchen being a mess. And then she was like, "What have you done to my house? What have you done?" Blah, blah, blah. And she was yelling. And then she turned and she started coming up the stairs to my room. And she came and she was yelling and yelling. And then she opened the door to my room and came in. And she goes, "I want you to get out of my house." And when she yelled that, she grabbed me. And at that exact moment, I woke up, and it felt like somebody had grabbed me in real life, and somebody had yelled it in my face in real life to get out of her house. And I
Wow.
was like, and I got so shook up. I was like, dude, I was so shook up. I just left the house for a few hours. And then I decided to say something to John. So I got home later, and I went to talk to John. I go, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I go, "Have you been noticing anything weird in the house? Like any kind of?" And he looks at me, and he's just like, you could tell he hadn't been sleeping. He had bags under his eyes. And he goes, "Dude, you're gonna think this sounds crazy." He goes, "But I keep having a woman tell me to get out of her house." And he goes, "I hear it clear as day." And he goes, when you're at work, I hear people walk back and forth in the kitchen." And at the time, we had one roommate, but he was like working out of town. So it
Mm.
was like he would be gone all week and then come back on the weekends. And I told him my story, but hearing a woman tell me to get out of her house, and um, yeah, it was just a creepy coincidence. And then the last part, and this is in another video too, was that when I first moved in there, I had this weird thing go on where I would turn when I turned all the lights off in my room, I would hear a sound. And it wasn't like something in the walls. It wasn't like what it sounded like to me was like so the floors were wood. But you know the sound of something kind of like a blanket or something being drug across wood, I would hear what sounded like that and I'd be like, what the hell is that? I'd turn it on, there's nothing there. And I even remember one night I like had my cat and I was holding my cat and I turned the lights out and I started hearing that sound. And I took my cell phone light to kind of just shine enough to see what my cat's doing. And my cat started going like it's seeing something, like it's hearing or
Mm.
seeing something in the room. And it eventually led to me being creeped out to a point where John was out of town. The other roommate, he might have been kicked out. I can't remember, but he wasn't there anymore. And it was just me by myself. And I was so creeped out that when I went to bed, it was like really late at night. I don't know, like maybe 1 in the morning. And I decided to try to create like a positive energy atmosphere. So I actually went to bed with the light on and I put on the movie Hook because always considered Hook like a really, fun, like positive magic kind of music or movie. And I fall asleep during the movie. And then I end up waking up during the credits. And as I'm waking up, I'm like opening my eyes and I look at the screen and the room's dark and the screen just has the credits rolling. And I'm looking around like, why is the room dark? And I look over at this the light switch and the light switch is on, but the room is dark. And then all of a sudden I sit up, kind of creeped out, and I'm looking at the light and it had dimmed all the way to being off. And then it started to slowly come back on normally and eventually came
Fuck.
back. And I just was like, fuck this. I grabbed I grabbed my nunchucks, my cat, went out to my car, left, went and parked in this parking lot of some it was a church nearby, and then
Mhm.
slept a few hours in that parking lot. And then eventually when the sun rose up, I went home. But yeah, it's just a weird coincidence.
Yeah.
It, and then the final thing was that after I moved out, years later, I was with my friend Michelle, and we were talking about. I was explaining this house I used to live in, and she goes, "That sounds like the house I used to buy drugs from." And I was like, "Really?" And I go, let's see if it's the same house." So we go and drove past it, and when we were driving past it, it was the same house. But what I noticed is there was this weird thing on the side of the house, on like upstairs, that I'd never noticed before, and it
Hmm.
almost looked like something that was blocked off, like something used to be there, but it was blocked off. And I go, "What is that?" And she goes, "Oh, I think that's a like an old time laundry chute." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like explaining something about laundry chutes, like used to um like you'd put them and they would take the clothes and then the clothes would drop down to where they need to
Mm.
be washed. So they would drop.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden it dawned on me that the area, that room upstairs that's connected to was my room that I lived in. So laundry, that's where they had laundry was in that room. So me
Mm.
hearing what sounds like, blankets and stuff moving around in that
Yeah.
room, just a weird chill, like a weird coincidence. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, dude, it's fun telling these stories. And we're both skeptical at the same time. Like I've had my experiences,
Yeah.
but I also think it's very possible that, you know, a mild level of schizophrenia. Who knows? Uh,
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not one of those like black and white, like, oh, it's definitely ghosts and they're all real. But they're fun to talk about. And it's worth like I think it's worth considering. Like life is much more interesting when you are allow yourself to consider that kind of stuff, you know?
well, it's like I have certain skepticism about people who think they're experts on it or think
Hmm.
that like they try to make money off of it.
Yeah.
But it's like I do think there's a genuinely stuff that happens that we don't have explanations for. The science
Yeah.
community has not fully explained or explained to, my satisfaction because of my personal experiences.
Yeah.
Um, well, shit, dude. Uh one. Any more ghost stories, or is that?
I think that's it for me. It's funny that you totally jogged my memory about that, the stuff with the house in the woods, because I was actually talking about the ghost in the or the boy in the Camas Camas woods. I
Boy in
don't
the
know if you
Camas
remember.
Woods?
Yeah, so you were telling me that you were in Vancouver Camas area, and you someone had gone missing in the woods there, and you had a dream that someone was leading you out there and pointing to an area,
Oh,
and
dude,
then
it
go
wasn't
ahead.
it wasn't a boy. Fuck, I forgot about this story. Um, I had a dream because my parents' house when I was living there it connects with it pretty much blends into Camas. And I
Hmm.
had this dream that there was a train that went through the neighborhood and it went through the field out there. There was just a barren field and I was on the train and there was a little girl that kept like pointing at stuff. She wasn't talking, but she kept pointing at stuff and she had a weird like demeanor about her. And I was like, "Hey, what are you trying to tell me? What's going on?" And she kept like just pointing at like some part of this field. And
Hmm.
I remember like something bad happened to her, and I had woken up, and it would just kind of creep me out and had me like kind of like that's just a really fucking random specific dream. I used to have dreams like in my teenage years up to my early 20s where this is gonna sound fucking creepy, but like where people who have passed were trying to tell me stuff,
Hmm.
like tell me like I but yeah this particular story um a few months after that my parents found in their backyard they found parts of train tracks when they were digging
Oh
stuff
wow.
up and looked in the history and there used to be a train that went through the neighborhood and that's you know
Yeah.
yeah I've had a couple yeah I wonder if I have them written down anymore but I got creeped out to the point where I stopped paying attention to these dreams because it would just like they would be so specific.
Yeah.
And if it's my subconscious, it's like really creative, for my subconscious to be coming up with these weird like riddles or weird like more morality stories. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, good memory. I mean, you weren't exact with it, it wasn't a boy, but you were. I hadn't thought about that in a long time.
I
Um,
thought, wasn't there something to it too where like you didn't, obviously you didn't do anything about it, and then like a week or so later you had a dream with the girl again and she was like pissed at you?
no, no, this is another dream. Geez,
Is
you're
that
really
okay?
pulling
I'm
out these.
mixing.
So this when I was 15, I had so I had this friend named Mark that I used
Hmm.
to hang out with in junior high school. And I had this dream that there was really fucking random because I didn't hang out with Mark that often, but there was this house, a couple like three houses down from where he lived. And I randomly had this dream when I was 15 that there was this little boy with red hair that was trying to tell me something in this house and he was like calling me up and or not he was just waving at me and stuff and I was following him and he kept pointing at this little kid this child's bed and I was like what are
Hmm.
you trying to tell me I don't know what you're trying to tell me and then he was like pointing under the bed and he was pointing at something and I crawled under the bed and under the bed in the little weird spot on uh the frame of the bed was a note that was folded up and tucked in there and and then he was like pointing at like I assume his parents or whatever downstairs. Like he was trying to tell me something about like um and I woke up and I was like, what the hell am I supposed to go to that house and try to see if they ever had a red-haired child that passed or something? Like it was almost like they were trying something was trying to get me to tell them that there was a note, you know.
Hmm.
Um and I just kind of ignored the dream. What are you gonna do? I was 15, but then probably like 7 years later, I had a dream and that kid was in the dream and he was like talking to me now and he was angry and he just told me like why didn't you help me like why didn't you I had a message I wanted to give my parents after I passed why didn't you help me and it was really really aggressive and just I was scared and Like I woke up. I mean, I was probably 22 or something. Um, yeah, my dreams are just so wild. Like I have a really good memory, but part of that memory is like I probably think I want to say a third of my entire memory is dreams.
Mm,
Just dream like whole Alice in Wonderland dream worlds that I
yeah.
will revisit and see the same characters or see common things and um yeah, it's really I asked my doctor about it or with a therapist or something. They wanted to have like some scan on me or whatever. Um, I never did it, but she just was saying the way I explained my brain that it didn't operate like normal or whatever. And then I threw out the theory that I told my parents this that I probably had a twin when I was in the womb, but the
Hmm.
twin died, but I incorporated their brain tissue and and I told them that the doctors were talking about a procedure called a skull expansion because I was having headaches and yeah they need to increase the size to deal with the extra brain tissue. And my mom believed in me for part of it, and then she was, "Why do you always tell us these stupid stories about what the doctor said?" Because I'm always like, every time they're worried about some doctor visit, I come up with something just fucking wild. But
Uh,
why didn't you tell me about my dead twin? He- here's a story you might like. So my my niece at the time, Lily, uh, when I was renting a basement for my brother a few years back, Lily got really, I don't know, she's probably like 7 at the time. She got really into ghost stories. So she was always watching ghost stuff on YouTube, and she had gotten herself creeped out enough to where she was scared to go to the bathroom at night. So she'd wake up my brother, and he'd get up, and he told her, "You're not going to be allowed to watch those if you keep getting scared like this." And then a couple days later, I was like in the living room talking, and I'm always making up stories to my nieces and nephews and stuff. And I tell her, I go, yeah, Lily, I don't know if you ever knew this, but you used to have a twin brother named Billy. And she's like, I did not. I go, yeah, he did. I go, but Billy didn't make it. Billy's not with us anymore. I didn't have a twin brother. And I go, yeah, yeah. I go, you know what's really creepy, Lily, is the other day Billy, I saw his ghost, and he was trying to talk to me in the middle of the night, and I was like, no, Billy, what do you want? And he said he was looking for his twin sister, and I said, Billy, I've told you this before. Just wait in the bathroom at night. That's you and your chance to talk to her. And my brother was like, no, because my brother would let the story start until it gets to a certain point, and then he'll intervene. He goes, no, you've never had, because at this point she's like looking at her dad, and he's like, you never had a twin brother. Don't listen to this shit. And I go, don't tell her. Like,
how old
you
was she when you told her that?
probably like 7.
Oh God.
Um,
That's good uncle moves right there.
man. Well, one last thing I wanted to mention before we go. Is there anything else you can think of you want to bring up or?
No, I think that's it for me. But yeah, what's the thing you want to bring up?
I wanted to thank you because the last time I've seen you was on my birthday in 2011.
Wow.
And yeah, it's been almost 12 years.
Yeah.
And I was going through a really rough time, and I remember I was like in between places to stay, and you simultaneously invited me up to stay at your place, and I spent the night for my birthday, and you took me out. We saw that concert. Your friends, at the was like a little like local fair or something
Oh yeah.
in Lakewood or whatever, and got me some drinks, and then we had a really good talk. And your wife made a delicious dinner for me, and we had cake and stuff. It was really sweet, man, and I just really appreciated that.
Oh
And
yeah, of course, man. That's what friends are for.
even though we've kind of fallen out where we don't talk as often, and it's been a while, I just want you to know that I consider you like family. So like if you ever need anything in the future, don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, thank you very much. And honestly, I feel the same way. Like you're one of those people that, we won't talk for a few years and come back and it's normal. It's like, oh, I'm just talking to Rob. Like there's no weird, awkward, like, oh, so how are things? And how's this and that and the other thing? It's just natural. I'm like, oh, it's Rob. So yeah, of course, your family and anytime you need anything, I'm here for you.
I still need to make it
I
out to Japan sometime. You've been
yeah,
telling me for
I
years.
really value our friendship.
Back at you, brother. Um, well, thanks for doing this episode, and later on, maybe I'll hit you up sometime down the road for we'll have to do like another topic on weird stuff or whatever we want to talk about. But or if there's anything you want to talk about in the future, feel free to hit me up.
For
Um,
sure, man. I'd look forward to it.
so thanks again, bro, and I will talk to you later. Have a good night.
Yep, you too. See ya.